Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today's title is Thyroid Meds. More is not better. Matter of fact, more is often usually the problem. Okay, so this is a conversation I had with a discovery call person a week or so ago. This person has been struggling with hypothyroidism for a while. They've been to an endocrinologist. The endocrinologist has put them on various doses of LT4, and they just never felt well. So they got frustrated. They reached out to an integrative or functional practitioner, and that person wound up putting them on T3 as well, and they're still not feeling well. So at the time of the conversation, the person has both hypo and hyperthyroid symptoms, and her dose is, she's taken 250 micrograms of T4, she's taken 45 micrograms of T3, and wonders, why am I not feeling better? I have plenty of medication, I just don't feel well. And her issue is she's over-medicated. And I asked her how she got on this dose, and she said when she was doing the T4 only, she just didn't feel well. Her doctors tried to increase the dose and decrease the dose, and they couldn't find a dose where she really felt well. She went to see an integrative practitioner who ran more than a TSH and a free T4, and saw that her total T3 and her free T3 were low, her reverse T3 was elevated, and said, we need to give you T3 because you're not able to convert T4 to T3. And so she started on about 5 micrograms of T3 and she felt better. And that lasted for a while, and then she wound up on 10 micrograms. And she felt better for a while, and then she wound up on getting a more dose. And so as she was increasing the T3, then they had to start increasing the T4 because her T4 was going down. And she wound up just slowly over time, over a period of a couple of years, winding up on this dose of 250 micrograms of T4 and 45 micrograms of T3. So little perspective here. The average thyroid gland makes about 100 micrograms, 80 to 100 micrograms per day of T4. It makes somewhere around 5 to 10 micrograms of T3. Of the T4 that's made by the thyroid gland, it goes out into circulation, and about the peripheral tissues convert maybe some of that T4 into another 20, 25 micrograms of T3. So all in, there's about 100 micrograms of T4 made per day. There's about 30 micrograms of T3 made per day. And so that's what a normal physiology makes. So then you might ask the question, why would this person need 250 micrograms if normal thyroid gland only makes 100 micrograms? And why would she need 45 micrograms of T3 when the body normally only makes about 30 micrograms? And it's a great question, but take a couple things into consideration. One is the absorption in the GI tract. T4 medication, somewhere around 60% of that medication gets absorbed. It could be as high as 80, as low as 40, and it really depends on when you're taking it. Are you taking it with food? Are you not taking it with food? Or do you have a gut-based issue, which is a lot of people who have a thyroid condition have GI-based problems. And this person probably does as well, because if she's got still abnormal thyroid panel, even though she's taking 2.5 times the amount of T4 that she would normally make, and maybe 5 times the amount of T3 that the thyroid gland would make, she's probably not absorbing as much of this stuff. So she's got a gut issue, and that probably needs to be addressed. But she's taking way too much medication. Now, how did she get here? A little bit at a time is the problem. And so this person is not feeling well. They're feeling both hypo and hyper. And she's wondering, what else can she do to feel and function well? And I would say the steps, even though I don't prescribe medication, my advice to her clinician, whoever's prescribing this stuff, is you stop over-medicating her. More is not better. When you provide more thyroid medication than the body needs, there's a number of issues that are going to occur. You're going to saturate probably the hypothalamus. That's going to ramp up the fight or flight system. It's going to downregulate the parasympathetic system. You're going to create brain-based, more hyperthyroidism, where you're going to get more anxiousness, more insomnia, more brain fog, more inflammation, more histamine response. And the excess amount of T4 in circulation is going to reduce the amount of peripheral conversion of T4 to T3 by the primary converting enzyme called deiodinase 2. And that's probably one of the reasons why this person is taking as much T3 as they are, because they're taking so much medication that they have eventually shut off the production of the gland, and they're replacing all of the T4 to T3 conversion with the amount of T3 they're taking potentially. And yet they're still going to have hypothyroid symptoms. Why? Because when you have more T4 in circulation than you need, you reduce the conversion of T4 to T3 by the enzyme called deiodinase 2. And the T4 that converts to T3 inside the cells and tissues lasts in the cell longer, maybe up to 8 hours, versus the T3 that's just pulled in from the bloodstream lasts maybe half an hour to an hour before it leaves the cell and goes back out. So that you're going to have a larger circulating pool of T3 to probably maintain less hypothyroid symptoms, but you're probably going to experience both hypothyroidism in the periphery and then hyperthyroidism in other cells and tissues at the same time. So what can this person do? This person needs to work with somebody who truly understands thyroid physiology. And what's my advice to this person, most clinicians? What we should be focused on is trying to provide the amount of thyroid hormone as close to the amount of thyroid hormone that the gland might make in any given day. And yes, you can take into consideration the absorption rates. But once we give the amount of thyroid hormone that the gland would typically make, then we should be focused on what can we do to help improve the conversion of T4 to T3. Too much T4 medication will reduce the conversion of T4 to T3. So we don't want more thyroid medication, especially T4, than we need. And if the goal is to potentially try and recover some function of the thyroid gland, then you don't want to be suppressing TSH and taking so much thyroid hormone that the gland has no work to do. If the goal is just to replace what the gland would make, then provide sufficient thyroid hormone to replace what a gland would have made, but not necessarily replace all the amount of T3 that the peripheral conversion would have done. But this is a case where this person who has a thyroid gland will likely just continue to atrophy their thyroid gland. It's not going to do any work. It's not going to do any function because they're taking more thyroid medication than the thyroid gland would ever make. They're probably reducing some of that peripheral conversion by taking the amount of T4 that they're taking. And they're creating essentially more of a hyperthyroid state. This is not the way to get healthy. This is not the way to get well. If it was, this person probably wouldn't be on the phone with me calling and saying, hey, what do I do to make me feel better? If you're taking enough replacement therapy to support what your gland can't make, and you're having difficulty converting T4 to T3 and having persistent hypothyroid signs and symptoms, then consider the fact that there is a small percentage of people who do have polymorphisms that reduce the T4 to T3 conversion by about 20. But that's only about 5 micrograms, okay? 5, maybe 10 micrograms tops. So that's a small amount of T3 that goes down. If you don't have a polymorphism, or even if you did, and you still have really low T3 and free T3 levels, then there's some type of cell stress response going on, some type of inflammatory process going on, some toxicity, some threat response going on, that the cells are adaptively decreasing the conversion of T4 to T3. That's not broken physiology, that's adaptive physiology. And trying to jam more thyroid hormone into a system to make the person feel like they're in homeostasis when their body's acting from allostasis is not going to work long term. It's going to create more problems. It's going to create a cascade of issues and perpetuate more poor health. It's not the solution. So more is not better. My goal for clients is to work with their prescribing physician to take the least amount of thyroid hormone needed. And then as we work on reducing those stressors that cause the dysfunction, continue to monitor the thyroid dose because it typically needs to go down.